Look at Zahra alayha salam. So many sorrows befell her. This is no ordinary lady. You know, if the Holy Prophet is al-ghai, is the ultimate reason for creation, is the ultimate role model for every single being in existence. He is the ultimate and the first manifestation of the nur of the whole of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's saying, Fatima bad'atun minni. Fatima is a part of me. ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي علا في توحده ودنا في تفرده وجل في سلطانه وعظم في أركانه ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهداة المهديين سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين وروحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتلتهم وغاسب حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ملعونين. Amma ba'd, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumeen, of the graves of the shuhada, ulama and siddiqeen, especially the marhuma Zahida Hassan, whom we remember today, and for the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and the one who is Rahim. We have once again gathered for this Ithalis Thawab Majlis for a mother, and the last two times we had selected different topics when doing this Majlis, and I'd said one thing at both of those Majalis, and that was that death for us is not just for that individual, or death is not just for that individual, but rather it is a lesson for those of us that remain. That we look at our own lives and we take stock of our life. How much of this life have I spent that will aid me in eternity? How much of these years that I have had, these years that are fleeting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by the time, says, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, that surely mankind is in loss. The human being is in loss. What loss does a person have that is just born? They haven't committed any sin. So this khusr, this loss, is something else that they're losing moment by moment, and that is the time that He swears by. That every single second of your life that passes by is a second that you will not gain again. And so every single moment, And every single second and every single minute is precious, because simultaneous to that, your heaven and hell is being created. There is no set heaven and hell. Every sin that you do, it creates an adhab for you. Every good deed that you do, it builds your akhirah for you. That realm, the realm of the barzakh, the realm of the semi-material, is the realm of tajassamul a'mal. Every single action that you do takes a form in that realm. And it's happening simultaneous to your existence now. Everything that you say, everything that you think, every action that you commit is forming an akhirah for you, or destroying part of your akhirah. And so when we come across death, one should take stock. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. That Allah has created life and He has created death. Both are constructs of this world. Both are something that are meaningless in the grand scheme of things, because both life and death are creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the human being was created to exist above these. Death for an individual is just the next step into eternity. For the believer, that's why they don't fear death. Whereas those that don't have iman, they run from death. They run from death. But that death is chasing them at every stage. As Sayyid al-Shuhada says, he says death, he describes death like this. He says that death is like a necklace that hangs around the necks of maidens, of beautiful ladies, those beautiful necklaces. He says, for me, death is like this. He says, it is something that is sweet. But that death can only be sweet if one lives a life such that when they encounter death, they're happy to take that step. But if I know I've sent nothing forward, if I know that I've not prepared for that inevitable end, then I fear it. Then I'm scared. The more attached I am to this realm, to the multiplicities and the materialistic things within this realm, the more afraid of death I am, because I'm afraid of leaving these things. And so one has to live a life where they anticipate death and they embrace death. Because as Allah says in the Holy Quran, قُلْ إِنَّ الْمَوْتَ الَّذِي تَفَرُّونَ مِنْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مُلَاقِيكُمْ. Tell them, this death that they run from, they'll meet it. Whether they go hide in the mountains or they go and hide under the ground, that death will come to them wherever Allah has ordained. So He says, don't worry about that. Worry about your life beyond that. Don't worry about the stage of death. It's what's to come after that that's important. And the only way that you cannot be worried is if this life that you lived was a life worthy of living. Many people live and die, and it is as if they had never lived. But others live for a short time and die, and their name continues forever. People continue to remember them. So a person has to live a good life, that goodly life. But when one sins, that destroys that inevitable end, that sanctuary, that peace that they are to go and encounter. And in sins, there are certain categories. There's a very lengthy tradition from Imam al-Sajjad, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. where he's speaking to his companion Abu Khalid al-Kabuli, and he's telling him the effect of certain sins. So you know the portion of Dua Kumail that you would have recited earlier today. Allahumma ghfir li al-dhunub allati tahbisu al-du'a. Allahumma ghfir li al-dhunub allati tunzilu al-bala. All of these things, forgive those sins of mine that stop my dua from reaching, forgive those sins of mine that bring bala, those sins of mine that do tughayyirun na'am, that change those blessings into something negative for me. There are sins attached to it. I've selected a portion of this particular hadith where the Imam speaks about something extremely important. Every human being, their respect, their izzah is important to them. There is no human being that enjoys being humiliated. Or no normal human being, I should say, that enjoys being humiliated. The human being, by his very nature, is something that has been created to be aziz, to be given izzah. But there are certain things, if they were exposed, the sixth Imam says, if Allah was to lift all of the curtains from in front of your sins, no one would send salam to you. No one would even come to your salatul mayyit, because they know how much of a bad person you are. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps these curtains because He is Sattarul Uyub. He is the one that hides your sins from everyone. But there are certain sins that a person does that rip apart these curtains, that expose a person for humiliation. And that is the topic for today's lecture. The Imam, he says, وَالذَّنُوبَ الَّتِي تَكْشِفُ الْغَطَاءِ, and those sins that remove those curtains and expose a person in front of the world are 8. The first, the Imam says, الْإِسْتِدَانَةُ بِغَيْرِ نِيَّةِ الْأَدَاءِ. The first sin that exposes a person is the one who takes a loan without the intention of repaying. The one who takes a loan without the intention of repaying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expose that person. Taking a loan per se is not a bad thing. Giving a loan is not a bad thing, obviously without interest. Amirul Mu'mineen would take loans from the Jews of Medina at times. When times were difficult, he'd take a loan. So taking a loan is not a bad thing, and giving a loan is highly recommended. Qarzul Hasana, where you would give someone sadaqah, the reward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained for you is 10 times. It's a 10x reward. You give something, Allah will 10x it and give it back to you. But he says, if that same sadaqah that you're giving to that believer, you make the niyyah of qarzul hasana, of an interest-free loan, he will give you 18 in return. Why? Why? It goes back to the point of izzah. When you give someone sadaqah, whether you like it or not, there is an aspect of dhillah that it comes in them, because they're taking. But when you give someone qarzul hasana, you say, look, this isn't sadaqah, I'm giving you a loan. When you get back on your feet, you repay it back to me. Whether you choose to take that back or not is up to you. But the initial intention is, I'm only giving it to you as a loan. Now what does this do? This brings the person up to your level. And so you save the izzat of a mu'min. And so Allah says, I'll give you 18 in return. But the person that takes a loan without the intention of repaying, that person will ultimately become dhaleel. And some people, they have this habit. Some people have a problem. It's a spiritual disease. They can't help. They have money, but they'll still go and try and ask people for loans, because they don't want to lose what they have. Yeah, they think somehow if I use this, it's going to deplete and then everything's going to go wrong. I much rather go and take a loan from someone else. That's a problem as well. But the worst is the one that takes that loan and doesn't want to repay it. The second thing that exposes a person, the Imam says, وَالْإِسْرَافُ فِي النَّفَقَ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ, is wasting one's money on useless things. Wasting one's money on useless things. Israf, wasting. Fir'aun in the Holy Quran is the one that says, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, I am your greatest Lord. Fir'aun is the one that oppresses Musa. Fir'aun is the one that kills the children of Bani Israel. Fir'aun is the one that imprisons Bani Israel, enslaves Bani Israel. Fir'aun is the one that has countless amounts of dhulm that he does, but yet when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces him, he says he is musrif. He's one that would waste money. This is hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one that has wealth, but he wastes it in useless things. You look at our lives and our desire to wear designer goods. The same thing that's probably made in a sweatshop in Bangladesh or China, and they're only getting paid 10 or 20p, and the whole thing costs 30 or 40p to make. And then here it's being sold at 400, 500, 600 pounds, and they'll even sell you a knockoff for 150 pounds. And there are those silly enough to wear it. Those silly enough to want it. Why? Because I've got to have nice clothes. I want people to think. One thing is buying the extortionate product. Then the other thing, even worse than that, is buying a knockoff of the extortionate product. What does that say about a person? About their own self-worth? That because they can't afford something, so they'll pretend that they have it. That's the worst situation to be in. I'll pretend that this is whatever brand it may be. As impractical as that is, but I just want people to think that I'm like that. And that person will always be hollow inside. No matter how much they try and find wholeness and a level of respect within themselves, they'll never find it. Why? Because they derive their sense of self-worth from an external thing. They think that the clothing on their body is what defines them. They think the brand that they wear is what makes them who they are. But actually it's all useless. It's of no use. Because that is not what defines a person. In the end, it is the character of a person that defines him. You people walking around, yeah, I spent £500 on a pair of shoes. £500 on a pair of shoes. Like why? So something to put on your feet. But yet you see more and more believers, mu'mineen, that should know better, that are striving to wear this particular brand. I want to wear this, I want to wear this fake cap, or I want to wear whatever, I want to dress like a roadman, whatever it may be. For what? So that they can derive a sense of self-worth. But ultimately all they're doing is wasting their money. Allah says the one that does this will be exposed. Allah will expose the sins of this person for wasting money. But rather, if you place your money in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you put it in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like Zahra alayha salam did, نُطْعِمُكُمْ بِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ, in the way of Allah, not wanting a recompense, not wanting a reward, not wanting thanks, because that's very difficult to give and not know 100% where it's going. but you can give. And if anything from these Ayyam Fatimiyya that we're going through, you want to learn that ithar from Zahra alayha salam. See, ithar is above sacrifice. Ithar is to give when you don't have anything to give already. When you need that thing yourself, but you give it. That is ithar. And it's a very high level of sacrifice in the way of Allah. She gave away her food. And what happened in response? Allah sends a whole surah down. Surah Al-Dahab, Surah Al-Insan, in praise of what Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam did. So the second thing that exposes a person, that tears apart the curtains that hide their sins from others, is when one wastes money on useless things. The third thing, and it's connected to the second, says وَالْبُخْلِ عَلَى الْأَهْلِ وَالْوَلَدِ وَذَوِي الْإِرْحَامِ. When one is a miser, has money, he's wasting, but now is a miser with his wife, with his children, and with his blood relatives. I have money, I'll use it for all things, but when it comes to my home, and it comes to spending on my family, or it comes to spending on my children, that hurts. I don't want to do it. That bukhl rises there. Says anyone who is a miser like this. And we have so many cases. So many cases come to us in various communities. My husband is earning loads. He has enough. But he won't give me enough to go and buy proper food for my children. He wants to know where every single penny I've spent. He won't let me buy new clothes. He won't. This bukhl, this miserliness that an individual has to his family, to his wife, to his children, this will expose that individual. Imam al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi says a man needs three things in his home, within his character for his home. Three things: good akhlaq, sakhawat, generosity, wa ghayra, honor, gallantry. Says he needs to have these three things as the man of the house. And each of these are a lecture in and of themselves. But these are the three things that a person has. But the one that we mostly mistake, ghayra, is in terms of, we said, right, no, you can't do this because no, that's not the ghayra. Ghayra is more than that. It's where a person's ghayra is derived from a godly source, from the laws of God. The one that is bakhil with his children and his wife and his family members, the wider family. He's a miser with them. He doesn't share his wealth with them. He doesn't help them. So Allah will expose that individual. The sixth Imam would go and he would send secretly money to family members. And he would send it with one of his ashab, go and give this family member over there, give. And that ashab would come, that sahabi would come and give it to the relative of the Imam. And this person would say, may Allah bless you. You're helping us out. I have a cousin, Ja'far al-Sadiq. He doesn't even ever think about us. And he would say all sorts of bad things about the Imam. But the Imam didn't want. Hatta even in the wasiyah, the will of the Imam, he tells his son, he says, look, I've been helping this family member out for many, many years. He doesn't know it's me. I want you to continue this tradition. Don't tell him it's you. The worst thing I can do when I give someone something is then hold them to it. See, this is one of those things that destroys a person. When they bring up the ihsan, the good that they have done for others. When they totally bring that up. When they constantly bring that up, that exposes them, that will destroy them. So an individual who is bakhil to his family. But there's a balance here. If you look at the seerah of Sayyida, you find in there that she never sacrificed the haqq of one person for the other. What do I mean by this? She never sacrificed the haqq of Rasulullah for Hasanayn alayhimu salam. Nor did she sacrifice the haqq of Hasanayn alayhimu salam for Amirul Mu'mineen. Because all of these individuals, your children, your spouse, your parents, they have huquq over you, they have rights over you. And to balance that is what is ideal. Zahra alayha salam in her home never trampled the rights of anyone. Sometimes, in order to, please my husband's family or my wife's family, I trample on the rights of my own children. I know it's fine that, no, but you don't say anything, or I need to give them more time, I trample on the rights of others. She, salamullah alayha, balanced everything beautifully. There was no trampling of one person's right over another right. So the third thing that exposes a person is bukhl, with family, with wife, and with children. The fourth thing is bad akhlaq. Bad akhlaq. This will expose a person. The narration says, a man is hidden under his tongue. Just let a person speak to you for a few moments and you'll know what level this person's at. You'll know what type of person this is. A man is hidden underneath his tongue. There are those whose akhlaq, and we've spoken about this from this minbar many times, about the importance of good akhlaq. And having that akhlaq, in the way that we interact with people, in the way that we hold ourselves, the way that we sit, the way that we speak, the way that we act. All of this is akhlaq. But there are some people, no matter how much you tell them, they're still jahil about that akhlaq. They will still act in a certain way, no matter how many times you explain to them. They don't have that softness to them. One of the names of Hazrat Zahra alayha salam is Haniya. Haniya means someone that is mehraban, someone that is not only just generous but also empathetic towards others. You see how she was with her father from a young age. From a young age. She's only 4 or 5 years old and the Holy Prophet is praying and Abu Jahl comes and empties a bucket of camel's intestines over the Holy Prophet. And she, salamullah alayha, runs over and she begins to clean her father, crying. And so at that point the Holy Prophet said, may your father be sacrificed for you. Anti ummu abiha. You are the mother of your own father. That empathy. She was haniya. Some people may have impeccable akhlaq in and of their own, within themselves. But yet, when it comes to showing empathy towards others, that's not there. But she was someone that had that level of empathy towards Amirul Mu'mineen. Look at the state that Zahra alayha salam is in. especially at the start of Islam, especially at the start of her marriage. There are days that go by, they say Amir al-Mu'mineen returned once from somewhere, said Imam al-Hasan, Imam al-Husayn's color had changed. They'd become almost like yellow in their skin tone, their eyes. And he said to her, Fatima, what's wrong with the children? Says, Ya Ali, they haven't eaten properly for 2 days. They haven't eaten properly for 2 days. It was extreme poverty at the start of Islam. Then towards the end of Medina, the rule of the Prophet in Medina, the wealth of the Muslims began to increase. But up until this point, it was extreme difficulty. Said, Ya Ali, they haven't eaten properly for 2 days. Meaning they've had small scraps but no proper food. Amir al-Mu'mineen says to her, Fatima, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything? Says, Ya Ali, says, I'm embarrassed in front of Allah that I asked you for something that you could not provide. She knows Amir al-Mu'mineen's got nothing, hasn't got anything in his pocket. She knows what the state is. She says, I'm embarrassed in front of Allah that I ask you for something and you would not, and you are unable to provide it. That level of empathy that she had. He would enter the house, Nafsi laqalbiqa. He would enter the house and she would run to him. May my soul be sacrificed for you. Ruhi lakal fida. May my soul be sacrificed for you. That's why he says that whenever I entered into the house, all of my sorrows would go the moment I'd see the face of Fatima. Because she was haniya. So the fourth thing that exposes a person is bad akhlaq. The fifth thing, qillatul sabr, having a lack of patience. Having a lack of patience. Some individuals come across the smallest test and all of a sudden they give out. Why me? Why is God doing this? I hate my life, everything. They can't bear it. But there are greater tests. When a person is patient upon the test, reliant on Allah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide them and take their hand and take them to that destination that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. You think Yusuf alayhi salam didn't have tests in his life? He did. But you know, every person will get one major test in their life. Smaller tests will come, but it's the major test that shaitan is waiting for. Yusuf alayhi salam had many tests in his life, but the major test came at what point? When he was locked in a room with Zulaykha. She'd locked all of the doors, ordered for all of them to be locked from the outside, and now she was with him alone in a chamber. The intention is to do haram. What does Yusuf alayhi salam say at that point? Allah. And what does Allah do? Says Yusuf ran and the doors opened. I just told you she had the doors locked from outside. Who opened the door? The same Allah that Yusuf had relied on. Sabr is not just in the face of musibah, in sorrow. It's patience in the face of sin. If I can be patient in the face of a sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise me up. Just there's those moments that you have. Every test that you have in your life, be patient on. But then there'll come major tests. If you can be patient on the major test that comes in your life, Allah will raise you up. He will open the doors of spirituality. He will take you Himself towards Himself. But it's about being patient. Our patience in this day and age is being reduced. Our attention span is being reduced day by day. They don't want you to be able to think deeply about things. They don't want you to be able to critically analyze the world events. They just want you to sit down and have the attention span of a goldfish. 30 seconds now. That's what we're down to. Before it was, 45 minutes, it's okay. And then it came down and said, no, you know what, 15. And they were like, oh, now nobody sits through a 15-minute video. We'll come down to 5, and then 3, and then it went down to 1, and now it's like, look, 30-second TikTok. As much knowledge and information as you can give in that 30 seconds, because that's the attention span of an individual. It increases. You see it even in majalis. There are certain people who don't have the attention span. Every moment they want to talk to the person next to them because they have that attention span of a goldfish, because they've been indoctrinated to lack that attention span. And slowly but surely you get indoctrinated to have that level of an attention span, then you don't have any ability to analyze and critically analyze what's happening around you in the world, because all you can think for is 30 seconds before you get distracted by the next shiny thing. To be able to increase that attention span, it needs sabr, it needs patience. Patience in the face of sin, patience when dealing with other people. A lady comes to visit Hazrat Zahra and says to her that my elderly mother cannot come and visit you. She sent me to ask you a question. Hazrat Zahra says, ask me. She asks her one question. Hazrat Zahra replies, she says, can I ask another? She asks a second, and then a third, and then a fourth, until 10 questions she asks. And then at the end, the woman herself becomes ashamed. Says, I'm sorry, I feel embarrassed. I asked you so many questions. I said, I only want to ask one. Zahra says, no, ask as many as you want. Someone like me, someone asks me one question, okay. Then they come back with a follow-up, all right, I'm patient for that. Third time they want to debate, I'm like, sorry, I've got to go somewhere. Yeah? Because I don't have the patience for it. I don't have the patience for it. But she says, no, you don't understand. If I was to offer you 100,000 dinar to take this bag up the stairs, would you take it? She says, yes, of course. She says, for every single question you've asked me, and I've answered, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessing me with far more than that in the akhirah. Having sabr. عند المصيبة, at the time of sorrow. عند البلاء, at the time of difficulties, at the time of sin. When it comes to talking, when it comes to dealing with other individuals. You look at the patience of Zahra alayha salam. She's in the masjid. Amirul Mu'mineen has a rope around his neck. There's a sword to his neck. And they're forcing him, trying to force him to give bay'ah. And she raises her hand and says, if you don't release Ali, I will pray to Allah to curse you. And Amir al-Mu'mineen turns to Salman and says, Salman, go and tell Zahra her father came as a rahmah upon these people. If she raises her hands and prays, Allah will destroy this whole society. And so Salman tells her, and she's patient. And she walks away. A lack of patience is what exposes a person. The sixth thing, wal-kasal, the one that is lazy. A lazy person becomes exposed. Because their laziness is something that they cannot hide. You'll see it, sometimes when you're in a group of people and you've got a task to complete. And there'll always be the one person that'll be like, yeah, let's do this. And then when it comes to the time, they're like, oh, you know what? Can someone else do it? Because they're lazy. They don't want to do the work. It says the lazy person will be exposed. But for me, laziness isn't there when I want to sit with my friends and I want to chill or play PS5 all night long. That's not a problem. I don't feel lazy then. But ask me to pray, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. It's like qiyam, like I've been forced to carry the mountains on my shoulders. Ask me to wake up for Fajr, forget Salatul Layl for a second. Fajr, and it's like, la ilaha illallah. What is this adhab? Because my laziness comes out then. And I'll make excuses, and this excuse, that excuse, reading Quran, no connection with the Quran, because it comes down to laziness. And ultimately that person will be exposed. Laziness in ibadah. It's very easy to be active in everything else, but when it comes to ibadah, that's the point where you can see whether a person is lazy or not. Can they truly pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with that concentration? Look at Imam al-Hasan, he says, I saw my mother standing all night in ibadah. All night. Praying for the neighbors. And so I went and I asked her, Mother, all night you prayed for the neighbors. What about us? Al-jar thumma al-dar. First them, first others, then your own. But if I can push myself to do ibadah, the person who I think about first is myself. Forget even my parents, my brothers and sisters, even my kids. I don't care about them, it's all about me. Because if I'm putting in this effort, then I want something back from it. We hold God to ransom. We take God hostage, al-ayadhu billah. I'll do this, but I want something in return. I went through all these difficulties for you, where were you? Or I can't be bothered, I did it last time, nothing happened. Or sometimes people come and say, oh, I'm having this trouble in my life. Can you give me a dhikr? Is there some dua? Is there something to do? And you tell them, no, I've done that. Yeah, no, but you don't. No, it didn't work, I can't bother. Something else. They'll do it once and they don't get, oh no, I can't be bothered. And so this laziness won't allow them to achieve their goal and will ultimately expose them. The seventh thing that exposes the sins of an individual and opens him up to public display is, the Imam says, وَالْإِسْتِعَانَةُ بِأَهْلِ الدِّينِ. Belittling religious people. Belittling religious, making fun of religious people. Making fun of the ulama. Making fun of those that do ibadah. You'll see in your own lifetimes there are those people who will make fun of the ulama. This is an easy way of looking at those that make fun of the ulama, or they will swear at the ulama. Ultimately they may get away with it 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 months, 3 years, 4 years, but eventually they're always exposed. And I'm sure you can all think of different examples in your life. Belittling and embarrassing or making fun of the religious people, and not just the ulama, other mu'mineen that are religious. Someone comes up and says, no, I don't think, oh, now you become a mullah as well. We make fun. It says the one that makes fun of the religious person, Allah will expose that person. You look at all of these dictators, those that oppressed and killed ulama throughout history, that killed the mu'mineen throughout history. Where are they now? Nobody remembers them. All of them, everyone remembers in bad, with a bad view. Someone like Mutawakkil, who killed so many Hassani Sadat, such that he created a museum under his palace with their skulls. He would chop off their heads, remove their skin, and place their skulls on display underneath a plaque saying, this is the head of Fulan Hassani Sayyid. But now where is Mutawakkil? When you go to Kufa, they tell you from the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that was Darul Imara. That same Darul Imara that Muslim ibn Aqil was thrown from, Hani ibn Urwa was thrown from, that Mala'in like Ibn Ziyad sat in. But now where is that Darul Imara? Nothing remains. Seventh thing, wal istihanatu bi ahli din. Belittling, making fun of the religious people. And then the last thing, the eighth thing that the Imam says, وَإِسْتِعْمَالُ الضَّجَرِ, being glum or restless in sorrow. Meaning things haven't gone my way. I've got some sort of sorrow, I've got some sort of pain in my life, but letting that take me down. Letting that not be myself. So certain people, they go through difficulty and then they just go around, oh, my life is ended, this is wrong, that is wrong, this person, that, or they're constantly in this state. Says that having that glumness, having that constant sadness and this constant sorrow, eventually it will expose you. So what does that mean? I can't be sad? No, be sad. Be upset. It's okay if something has gone wrong in life. Have sorrow. But never lose tawakkul ala Allah. Never lose the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at Sayyid al-Shuhada holds the body of Ali al-Asghar in his hand. He says, Ya Allah, this is easy for me to bear, knowing that it happened under your watchful eye. Look at Zahra alayha salam. So many sorrows befell her. This is no ordinary lady. You know, if the Holy Prophet is al-Ghai, is the ultimate reason for creation, is the ultimate role model for every single being in existence. He is the ultimate and the first manifestation of the nur of the whole of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's saying, Fatima bad'atun minni. Fatima is a part of me. If every Imam is so dear to us, so beloved, so blessed with all of the karamat that are spoken about in dua, ziyarah jami'ah kabira, everything that the Imam says about the maqam of the wali of Allah, then the 11th Imam says that we are the hujjah of Allah ala al-khala'iq, upon existence. Wa ummuna Zahra Hujjat alayna. But our mother Zahra is hujjat on us Imams. Imagine her maqam. She doesn't say anything just like that. There is no poetic license. You know, sometimes we like to doll up the things we say. We use poetic license. Here, the A'imma alayhimus salam, Zahra alayhi salam, there's no poetic license. There's no exaggeration. It is but reality that is being spoken. So when she says Subbat alayya masa'ibun law annaha Subbat ala al-ayyam sirna layaliya, that if those sorrows that befell me were to fall upon the brightest of days, they would have become the darkest of nights. She's not lying. Ala ma'rifatiha dar al-qurun al-ula. Because through her ma'rifah, all of the solar system rotates. So when she is saying that gham that Zahra had to face, if they were to go on the brightest of days, it would become night. It's not just poetry, it's reality. But yet even with all of that sorrow, she goes door to door for 40 days. Imagine, for 40 days After the shahadat of the Holy Prophet, Zahra Marziya went door to door at the doors of the Muhajirin and the Ansar. She knocked at their door. Why have you left Ali? Imagine the madlumiyyat of Zahra. Why have you left Abu al-Hasan? When the women came to visit her, and they said to her, how is your morning? After they had come and attacked the house, said, how did you find this morning? Ya bint Rasulillah. Says, what do you mean? Why are you asking me about me? Ask me about Abu al-Hasan. Go and ask your men, why have they left Ali? Why have they taken away? She went to the masjid and she's addressing them. That's the moment that the Holy Prophet left this world. That's the thorns of nifaq became present in you. Ayatollah Safi says, if any other person had said this, they would have killed them. But it was only Zahra Marziya that could say these things. And no one could say anything to her. Imagine the sorrow that she carries around in her heart. Even with that, she still doesn't move away from defending the haqq. She doesn't move away from speaking what is haqq. She doesn't forget her role in this whole divine nizam. Zahra alayha salam was hawra insiyya. The Holy Prophet says Zahra wasn't like the rest of you humans. Zahra is hawra insiyya. She was a hur that came into human form. Zahra is haniya. She had empathy. She worried about the orphans, those that were imprisoned. But yet this ummah did something to her that from it her heart never recovered. After the house was burnt and the door was dropped on Zahra alayha salam and her Muhsin was killed in her womb, those days after that, Zahra day by day became weaker and weaker. Nahilatul jism, baqiyatul ayn. Her body she became a shadow of herself. This wasn't the same Zahra that Ali would walk in and all his sorrows would go. Now this was the Zahra whose tears were falling. That same Zahra that would run to the door to greet Amirul Mu'mineen, now she doesn't have the strength to stand from her bed. It was difficult for Zahra alayha salam, but it was also difficult for Amirul Mu'mineen. Nowhere does Amirul Mu'mineen ever wish for his death. Nowhere. Imagine how beloved Zahra was to him, that the moment that he placed her in the grave, he said, Ya Rasulullah, you ask her what this ummah did. And if you ask about me, فَأَمَّا لَيْلِي فَمَصَحَّدٌ وَأَمَّا حُزْنِي فَسَرْمَدٌ. Now my huzn, my sorrow will last forever, and my nights will remain sleepless. And then he buries her, and then he says, نفسي على زفراتها محبوسة يا ليتها خرجت مع زفراتي. It is as if I am trapped inside here, alone in this dunya, without you, Zahra. How I wish I too had left this world with you. Zahra, I'm not afraid of anything in this world, but the only thing now that Ali fears is having to stay in this world after you. The loss of Zahra was huge for Amirul Mu'mineen. Was huge. But bear a thought for those young children that were in the house, that had to see their mother disrespected in that way. that had to see ropes tied around the neck of Amir al-Mu'mineen and him dragged out of the masjid. They stood shivering in the corner, unable to do anything. Imam al-Hasan witnessed much more. He witnessed things that he could not even say. After the death of Zahra alayhi salam, they say Imam al-Hasan would cry much more than Imam al-Hussein. And they said to him, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, why is it that you cry? Your son, your brother Hussein also lost his mother, but you cry more. You cry more. He says there's a reason for it. And it's the same reason that for the rest of his life, whenever he saw Mughira, he always remembered that one moment. They say to him, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, what is it that makes you cry more for your mother than Hussein? He says, Hussein wasn't there when my mother was coming out of the masjid, and that Mal'oon stopped her in the masjid. I watched as my mother Zahra was slapped. لا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات بحسين.